Good morning, viewers. We are back again on our second episode on underwater navigation, communication, opportunities, and challenges. As you are aware, uh, Technology Innovation Hub IIT Tirupati is going ahead with a major seminar on the 31st of May in Delhi on the theme of underwater challenges and opportunities. And this second episode is a precursor to that. Before we start, I'd like to thank the Technology Innovation Hub IIT Tirupati for hosting this event, and a warm welcome to Commander Milind, who's actually a naval veteran but a profound professional in underwater navigation and communication. He also has a startup, and as we go down the line, we'll hear more from him. Let me begin by saying that about 5 decades ago, outer space evinced a lot of interest globally. A similar sentiment exists in present times on underwater, both commercially and militarily. Looking at it commercially, actually, we find that when we look at deep seas and underwater, it's an area of commercial opportunity. You have minerals, you have rare earths, you have oil, you have gas, you have energy, you have aquaculture, and I can go on. It also has channels which could be used for tunnels, oil pipelines, communication channels, OFCs and others. And therefore, if statistics are to be believed, by 2030, the underwater market is pegged at 400 billion US dollars. So that is the kind of quantum, statistically speaking. When we look at it from a military perspective, we find that the Indian Ocean region, which is ours, is huge and hugs the Indo-Pacific, which has always been active over the last decade or so. And therefore, from a defense perspective as well, there is a huge amount of energy and synergies that have been developed around the Indian Ocean region. Now, Commander Milind, you've been researching on this all through your military career and even later as a professional dealing with both the underwater geopolitics, geostrategy, and the technology landscape. Now, how would you look at the relevance of India's maritime interests closer to these oceans when we look at it from an exclusive economic zone or, say, Indian Ocean region perspective? May I have your views on this, please?
Thank you for the introduction, sir. Today, we live in a very interesting age where the oceans have taken a more relevant and important role, whether it comes for commercial or for security purposes. To introduce the fact that ocean covers approximately 70% of Earth's surface. It is the largest livable space on our planet, and there's more life in the ocean than on the Earth. So oceans also generate about half the oxygen which we, breathe. It's a critical element in our planet for the life on our planet, and understanding, protecting, and sustaining this as ocean habitat is become very important for human life. While we look at space, we need to still explore underwater. Only some percentage of the underwater world has been explored to date. Coming to India, we possess about 7,500 kilometers of coastline, which is huge, and about 14,500 kilometers of potentially navigable waterways within India. There are more than 200 ports, about 10 to 12 being managed by the government themselves. They're large ports. We rely heavily on Indian Ocean through shipping, our energy, import, trade, tourism, fishing. So, in and all, while we sit in Delhi or in North, oceans have a lot of relevance for inland states. We have oceans playing an important role in our climate. India is a peninsular country with 30% of the country's population living off the coastal areas. They balance the nature, ecology, environment. There is an international maritime organization which we as India are very much part of it. We have our representation there. We follow and abide by the rules set by them. There have been many instances of illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, which is of a deep concern for India and is being taken very seriously by Indian government. Various trawlers we have seen in the South China Sea. We don't want any of these conditions over here. The international waters or the EEZ, Exclusive Economic Zone, which is very vital for us in the future, is all monitored, and we are taking care that nobody, like we have Malaysia proclaiming some part of the straits. We have our presence in looking after all this. Finally, coming to the relevance of ocean science, UN has declared this as a decade of ocean science. That is from 2021 to 2030. India is also participating in a lot of activities are taking place in that. There is a National Decade Coordination Committee within India. So slowly but seriously, government has got into this for protecting the ocean and our maritime security.
Brilliant. That's very, very interesting to hear. Now, taking off from here, actually, when you look at, let's put it, the Indo-Pacific region, because that's a huge region. In fact, half the world's population resides here. And 65% of the region accounts for 25% of the global land mass. And more importantly, 60% of the global GDP is driven from the Indo-Pacific region. And 50% of the world trade passes from here. So really, in addition to the geopolitics and geostrategy, there's a huge amount of geoeconomic significance of the Indo-Pacific. Closer home, when we look at our own Indian Ocean region and the exclusive economic zone, and you alluded very beautifully on the various dynamics of this, purely from statistics again, the total land mass of India equals the total water mass that we have when we look at it from an area perspective and not the volume perspective. And more than 80% of the resources actually reside underwater. So that means only 20% of them actually reside on the land mass. Majority is in this mega area. And therefore, the underwater domain is a very important domain. And what we find is that today, India is just exploiting 4% of this in its GDP. So really, there's a huge opportunity that we can see manifested. So while that is economics, when we look at it from a military perspective, now the top three nations, and we are going to be in the top three economic affluent nations soon, once we touch the 5 trillion mark. But the top three nations, when you look at it from a submarine fleet perspective, which is the underwater visage of the navies, China has 78, Russia has about 70, US has about 68 submarines. And again, statistics have to be believed. And then, if this be so, now India on its side is actually very assertive, looking at the consortiums that have been created and the kind of naval exercises that are done to exude jointmanship. Can you give us an insight into the complete, the India's deep ocean mission, as we call it, and therefore, what are the dimensions of this when we look at it from an underwater perspective? Since you've been again researching quite a bit on this, and I'm aware of it, can we have your considered views as to what it is and what is the significance of the deep ocean mission of India?
India is well aware that only 5% of the deep ocean has been explored to date. This is overall figure. So India has set in a deep ocean mission, which has got some sub-parts to it to give more relevance and sense to the theme. The major the themes are like development of technologies for deep sea mining, manned submersible, and underwater robotics. Development of ocean climate change advisory services. That's another aspect of it. They'll all look interconnected, but I would like audience to pay attention to the fact that each of them are a technology verticals. When we start doing the research, each of them are serious technologies. Then we are talking about technological innovation for exploration and conservation of deep sea biodiversity. We also have a theme on deep ocean survey and exploration of minerals from hydrothermal vents, energy and fresh water from the oceans, advanced marine station from ocean biology. So overall, there are six of these aspects, which are, I call them verticals, which are being followed by Indian government, and they have been very beautifully described in detail. And as to what all is happening, it's all available on the web as per that. While this is a technology centered podcast, bringing in one of the developments which has been taken up and is being seriously pursued, which has got a geostrategic relevance also, is the deep sea mining. So, taking on the development of technologies for deep sea mining, manned submersible, and underwater robotics. Why they have been put together is because each of them complement. One is you can't do mining without having a submersible, and for submersible you require robotics. So, government has put all of them together um, under the contract with the International Seabed Authority. There is a seabed authority which controls who can do mining where. India has been allotted 75,000 square kilometer area for exploring for polymetallic nodules. Now, polymetallic nodules are available on the seabed. They occur naturally, but they're very rich in minerals which everybody is running around behind, like manganese, cobalt, nickel, copper, and you get all of them in one place. So, my friend does this for NIOT, and when he goes for these deep, I can call them mining. It's a very interesting thing which India has achieved recently. Commercially, this has a lot of potential based on how much we are able to pick up, because future is going to be underwater when we go to minerals. Picking them up from moon may be still a future. NIUT itself, under Ministry of Earth Science, has announced a breakthrough some time back, where they have carried out underwater seabed mining at depths of over 5 kilometers. As part of the seabed mining activity, they achieved the world's deepest underwater locomotion trials of an indigenously developed seabed crawler. So the beauty here is that everything has to be indigenous because nobody exports these technologies. It's a sensitive technology. It has a lot of geostatic relevance. And overall, it's a niche technology which no nature is going to just give you outright in the open market. This seabed crawler, which NIOT has developed indigenously, it forms a crucial part of any deep sea mining expertise and is being, harvesting polymetallic nodules from the depths of up to 6 kilometers in the located area. So the wherewithal to go forward in the future in this technology has to be developed indigenously by Indian agencies.
Great. In fact, you remind me of the amphibious underwater vehicles, which are autonomous systems, which have the abilities to go down deep sea, and of course on the seabed as well. And brilliant. Now, Milind, you have almost 20 years of over 20 years of experience in underwater domain, and you've been a huge technology person yourself, having also served in VESI before you superannuated, and you run a startup of your own now, dealing with various technologies. Now, when we look at it, when we look at the underwater domain, two very prominent issues come up. One is the domain awareness of underwater, and second is the underwater situation awareness, which is, domain is something which maybe we could say static, and situation could be changing. And both, when we look at it from a geopolitics perspective and otherwise, I think it is very relevant to look at both the underwater domain and underwater situational awareness. Now, when we look at it from a strategy perspective, there are two levels. The first level, or the ground level, is the one where you are sensing the undersea domain for threats from a military perspective, from resources and some activities. And piracy is also one very big activity which is going on these days. So that's one level. The second level is there's a lot of data getting generated, geospatial data, which is getting generated in terms of lat, long, depths, temperature, density of water, the pressures as you keep going down, and the various resources which you mentioned. And therefore there is a need to be there's a requirement of encapsulating this through a national maritime security strategy. But all this requires a huge amount of technology bandwidth. It's all in the domain of technology, because to absorb so much of data and so much, unless you have, you know, a data cloud, a means or technologies to capture this data in real time, to collate it and analyze it, I think it may not be possible. And when you look at it from a technology perspective, there are a lot of challenges. It's not as simple as it appears. Now, can you list out some of the specific technologies of interest when we look at it from a world-class indigenous underwater perspective? And the reason is that the seminar that we're going to host month end actually is going to focus on the technology gaps where we need to actually focus so that we can actually create the continuum of technologies required for underwater navigation and communication. So, your views on the technology landscape, please.
Yes, sir. So absolutely, like technology is going to be the basis of the science and the commercial aspect, or the military or security aspect in the Indo-Pacific for India. Uh, to share with the audience, the underwater technology is very difficult in terms of the marine standards which are supposed to be followed. Something which is not going to work is definitely going to fail. So we take care of a lot of aspects, parameters. In fact, we also take care that everything is now in the world of artificial intelligence, AIML, as we say. Uh, AIML for audience comes only after you have collected the information. So the sensor technology still has a lot of relevance. And sensor means it is a hardware and the software. Finally, underwater, we most of the time acoustics is available. So it's more of a analog to digital transformation which has to take place. This digital part has to be analyzed, and then that is where our AIML is going to apply. So anybody getting into underwater needs to understand that it should be a complete solution we are looking at. Coming to specific technologies, the list is going to be long, but as we have decided that this is a technology-based seminar, so I'll try to make it as quick and simple as possible. First of the technologies which everybody is working towards in India and abroad is design and development of depth-rated manned submersible. Manned submersible is something which is coming up. We are not talking about Titan and all the ad hoc kind of designs which had come in. Serious designs which have been depth rated by the government agencies. We are also looking at personal spheres for shallow waters. So when we talk about oceans, we are talking about deep waters and the shallow waters. Something which goes beyond 100 meters of depth, we categorize it as deep water research. The dynamics of deep water is very different from the shallow water. Maybe later in the podcast, we'll be discussing on the dynamics of the water, how it is varying all over the time, season, month, annually. So it's a very unknown kind of a dimension. The other important thing whenever we talk about submersible or anything which goes underwater is some sort of subsea batteries. A lot of research has been done in that. Submersible are powered by about 148 volts, 50 kilowatt hour kind of batteries, just to give an indication to audience. The other thing which is coming up is the acoustic modems for underwater communication. Uh, as we would have been reading very often in the newspapers, it's all about underwater unmanned vehicles. They are categorized actually into three parts. First is the ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, where they are tethered and we have somebody controlling from the mothership. The robo goes down, which has got two arms, and then it operates. We are talking about autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs. They are fall in a different category. India is looking at 6,000-meter depth-rated AUVs. Research and work is going on into it. Many universities have pitched in to take up this kind of work. The third category are the sea gliders. They work on the principle of hydrodynamics. You launch it, it keeps traveling for kilometers and keeps collecting the data which is around, and it has got a satellite link whenever it comes to the surface, transmits the information and goes underwater. Many of them have been caught in Indian Ocean region. So these are the three unmanned underwater vehicles which research and interest is being generated. Coming to deep sea technologies, integrated mining system is, for the collection of polymetallic nodules from the seabeds. We are talking about seabed depths up to 5,000 kilometers in the central Indian Ocean, because that's the designated area for India to do the exploration. And it is not about collecting them. It has to be successfully transported onto the surface. So if you actually see the amount of technology engineering which is to be evolved, everybody has a chance to work in that. We also are talking about hydraulic systems, which are controlled through 7-kilometer umbilical cable. The dynamics is totally different when we come to hydraulic power units for underwater. They beat anything on the surface. So this is another research area which is being followed up in India. We are also looking at high pressure pumping system up to 120 bar with a flow rate of 80 meter cube per hour. If you see the dimension, everything is difficult. I mean, it's not just easy. A commercial off the shelf item cannot work. Many times the marine standards are very stringent that people face it very difficult to even achieve them. And anything which cannot meet the marine standard, if we put in water, fails definitely. So it's over the experience of hundreds of years that these standards have come up. The other thing which, if somebody is interested in the technology, can be looking at desalination plants, also can look at ocean thermal energy conversions. We are also talking about wave energy devices. Some experiments are going into that. Ocean acoustics is a totally different, ball game, as it said, because the communication over the water, which is in the air, is the radio frequency. The electronics totally different. Underwater, it goes in a different dimension. That's one of the vertical research areas we are specialized in. Everybody is also looking at marine sensor systems. And whatever I'm listing here is what if somebody develops, government and private agencies do want to buy them off. When I talk about marine sensors, just like for tsunami, water profiling for salinity, temperature, and other minerals within the water, because they have an impact on the acoustics in the water. So for us, it is very important to have these measures and the dynamics created around that. Depth, temperature, conductivity has relevance when we talk about speeds of water. The sound in water, which is very different than in air. There is an indigenously, synthetic aperture side scan sonar requirement for profiling the sea bottom. So some work is going on into indigenously created. When we talk about indigenous work, in India, still many of the core technologies have to be imported. When we talk about systems like hydrophone or the sonars, the staves, the research is very expensive, and most of the time people are doing integration of these technologies. Somewhere it meets the end purpose, but still a long way to go. There is a special field called ocean electronics, which is for deep sea autonomous underwater profiling, sea glider, drone-based ocean data. Everything works on a navigation system, which is electronics and embedded software. So these are the requirements. We have drifting buoys also. We also have a satellite communication which has to be put over there with the optimum amount of battery which has to be involved in that. So There's a open sea fish cage culture technology for bioengineering. Anybody interested in biomass estimation device to estimate the fish growth? All these have impact on our commercial world. Uh, Most important is the artificial intelligence based data acquisition system. As you had mentioned, uh, once the information has come, got into digital form, has been picked up in the software, we need to have engines which run the AI based on the outcomes we are looking at. There are high frequency radar systems on the shore installation. If somebody is in the radio frequency RF microwave field, the biological oceanography studies marine life is evergreen thing which is to be evolved within the universities. Awareness has to come for the students. So I've just listed some of them. When we go into detail each of them, it can take days for that. But I think as of now, I have comprehensively tried to complete that aspect.
Thank you. I think that was very, very comprehensive, and I totally agree with you that when we look at the sensor technology, there are marine sensors, there are even hyperspectral sensors which look at hyperspectral imagery. Then we've got these synthetic aperture radars. You also alluded to them, and of course, uh, when we look at underwater exploration, whether it is a domain awareness issue or a situational awareness issues, I think collection, collation, and analysis of big data, and let me call it a geospatial big data, will be very, very important. And more importantly, as you also alluded to, navigation and communication underwater is a different ball game, and it varies from what you said, shallow depths to deep depths. Now, let's have your considered views on the underwater navigation and communication, uh, which is an evolving engineering. What do you think are the challenges and opportunities here from a perspective of research and going a deep dive into these technologies? Can we have your views on the underwater navigation and communication challenges?
So, underwater communication navigation is something which is an open field today. There's a lot of requirement within the marine domain in India, in the military also. Why it is an open challenge is because everybody has been trying to do over the last 7 decades to achieve good communication. When we talk about good communication, the limit never is reached. While we were talking about analog communication at some stages during World War II, and after that, we have now digital communication. We have text communication. We are talking about image communication, and people are also asking for video communication. So anybody who's looking into the communication field for underwater, uh, I can take this opportunity to brief about the technology which is involved so that the audience can pick up as to the area. Each of these themselves are verticals. When we talk about the communication underwater, the channel modeling is a science which a lot of PhDs have been written about. Uh, I can say thousands of PhDs are existing on that, but still we are not able to do that perfectly. So, with the advent of technology in modern times, underwater acoustic communication is a necessity. Various means of wireless communication underwater includes, like, people have tried optical waves, electromagnetic signals, and acoustic. So broadly, they fall into these three categories. The extra low frequency radio wave (ELF) also have been used using high power transmitters and very long antenna. This uses the principle of conductivity of salt water. So up to few meters below the water surface, you still can detect these ELF waves, which are like ground waves. The antennas run into kilometers. That is the kind of science which is involved. When compared to turbid seawater, clear seawater may, provide better optical condition for laser-based communication, but it is limited theoretically up to 10 meters only. So, two bodies talking amongst each other, they are to be within the range of 10 meters because there's a dispersion which takes place. So that's one of the areas people can take up as a research. Uh, we can be looking at narrow laser beams for transmitting optical signals. Fiber optics already there. Our internet and the whole world is on these submerged or submersible cable network throughout the world. While an underwater visible light communication may provide a higher signal throughput, we have a better bandwidth, but limited range makes it very restrictive in underwater communication. So what is emerging is finally the acoustics. So research is to be carried out more in the acoustics because though you have various considerations like limited bandwidth, severe fading, and intersymbol interference. Now, these terms have a lot of significance for communication engineering people, and that is what makes it more difficult to achieve communication underwater. There are physical and technical limitations. Underwater acoustic is governed by three major factors. Bandwidth, because of signal attenuation, we have influence on that. There's a fluctuating on the transmitted, multipath occurs. So the complexity keeps on going up whenever we talk about communication underwater. Despite of that, kilometers of communication has been achieved by some niche technologies, and we are also evolving some of them. Because of the challenging environment and limited understanding of the phenomena involved, as we are aware that ocean is totally different in its physical dynamics of communication. There are acoustic waves or mechanical waves which travel. Popularly, hydrophone have been used for underwater communication, but hydrophone-based solution also be suitable for some big platform, large platform. But more and more, we are going for underwater unmanned vehicles. We probably have to keep coming back to acoustics and some sort of a sensor which doesn't take that kind of a space as a hydrophone array for a good communication. So we know communication is inversely related with this is all those factors have to be taken care of. Research on underwater communication has really got significant attention because anything going underwater requires to send back health signals also way back. So most of the time you cannot have a tethered kind of a system that has its own limitation. The other factor which is being brought in is the underwater wireless sensor network, which is all about ROVs, UUVs, and all communicating as relay units to each other, or there are some floating buoys or underwater replicators which have been put. The need for underwater wireless communication exists for giving some use cases. Offshore drilling, oil industry requires it, pollution monitoring requires it, collection of scientific data requires underwater communication to occur. Uh, Divers require it whenever they go for deep sea diving or shallow water diving. Mapping of seafloor requires communication. So anybody who's evolving the underwater communication today is likely to be making a lot of money as successfully if he deploys. Uh, Despite of continued efforts by a lot of agencies in science and technology, there's still a clear gap between terrestrial communication and underwater acoustic communication, mainly because undersea communication faces challenges, which are like multipath propagation, small bandwidth, serious signal attenuation over large distances. The salty water itself has its own implication on that. So, underwater communication as a research area is a very interesting topic for research, and it has its own dimensions. And I can list out about 50 to 100 unknowns which have to be still evolved in that. So, it's a mystery we are all working towards to solve.
You remind me, Milind, of a poem I read in class 10 called The Elegy, written in a country churchyard by Thomas Gray. It said, "Full many a gem of purest ray serene, the dark, unfathomed caves of the ocean bare." I think when you were talking about the technology landscape and the complexities, I was reminded of that. Now, that said, viewers, you've heard the kind of opportunities that exist in the technology domain, both, like I said, the domain situational awareness and domain awareness by itself. Uh, when you look at it from various perspectives, when you look at it from a commercial perspective, there are challenges. When you look at it from a military perspective, there are challenges. When you look at it from the various depths, because as you keep going down, the effect of reflection, refraction, absorption, and attenuation goes on increasing. And as you go deeper, like what Commander Milind alluded to, the deep sea, the challenges become manifold. And therefore, whether it is a sensor technology, whether it is a technology for navigation or communication, I think there is challenges galore. And at IIT Tirupati, we've taken up this mantle of taking up challenges and converting them into, if I may say, TRL level research programs and projects, so that all those of you, either as entrepreneurs or as startups or MSMEs or maybe even research scholars who evince interest, could come here, take advantage of the ecosystem that is created by subject matter experts, by the kind of labs that exist to do research in these areas, and of course, open vistas not only in India for all the institutions that exist for underwater exploration, but globally. So look at it as an opportunity from developing technologies, skill development, international collaboration, and maybe giving fillip to your own startup. And with that, before I conclude, I'd like to ask one very important question, because Commander Milind has been the architect of a large number of startups. He's been mentoring them as well. He's been with robotics. I told you he's been with VESI, handling operational and combat systems in design and development stage. He's been in Industry 4.0, very versatile profile. And Milind, tell me about your own startup mission.
So basically, we owe a lot to the governmental policies. We are as part of a startup mission which was launched in 2016. We took that opportunity because there are a lot of startup ecosystem agencies which evolved under the promotion of Industry and Internal Trade DPIT Directorate. Basically, now startups have become easier to start and sustain because of regulatory patterns have been changed. There are a lot of tax exemption features which have been created. Looking at the scenario and the ecosystem in India for the startup, we established ourselves formally in November of 2020. That was a COVID time, felt the brunt of it, just like everybody else. Our startup journey, I can say, seriously started when we started on a R&D project of multi-platform, multi-sensor data fusion. These are the areas which are like our personal expertise. Anybody who is looking at a startup should have a personal R&D expertise, or the team they have, because sustaining it for more than 3 years or 4 years requires core R&D behind it in the technology field. Marine solutions, especially for deep ocean, are complex and requires verticals in R&D. So that is the team and the kind of work we have done over the years. AI/ML is our specialization. Whenever we talk about AI/ML, it has to be followed up with the dataset collection. A lot of startups, start collecting information commercially and try to rebundle it. However, it is the serious business of collecting from the very oceans where you have to deploy your solution. We had interactions with academia, DST, and all. Many times, universities and colleges have approached or taken approach more from a student project level. However, they don't make a marine deep tech innovation possible, because field trials have to be always kept in mind, to share my views. A few other challenges which we face is regarding, funding. Everybody and the whole ecosystem is used to supply order concept, whereas in innovation, it is like you first have to prove your technology of R&D, and thereafter you have a supply order which follows up. Startups in deep tech are very risky. To warn those who just want to start up, or sit on the startup wagon. Any university student with a desire to set up a deep tech needs to start the requirement understanding part first. So my recommendation would be that requirements gathering phase of any project which a student or a university get should be at least 60% of the project time and resources. Uh, Coming to the requirement, marine QA standards are very stringent, and system there once lost is very difficult to recover. So you cannot have lakhs of rupees of machinery put in water without following the standards, because everybody does lose equipment in the oceans. Especially when you go to the sea in monsoon weather, we are talking about sea state 4 and 5, where operations are not for ordinary people. There's a loop of extended duration of trials, and that is what is a trap which startup should or students should look at avoiding. Uh, they should come prepared with about 20 to 25% changes in the requirements as we go down the line. It can be more based on what are the requirements which are elaborated. Uh, One way of goodness of that is that you can innovate and put it up. It doesn't follow a strict regime, and success can be better. Other is like you keep changing and it takes resources, manpower, time, and your budget is also always running low on that. One is always recommended to have a resilience, a real passion, and a true deep tech startup, ability to make it successful in India.
Great. I think um, I'm quite convinced that what Commander Milind has brought out is very, very relevant. You have to have a very huge bandwidth available to be able to manage deep tech, especially when it comes to underwater domain. And more importantly, as you look at the unmet needs, since they are challenges, they are complex problems, and when you try and create a solution, actually you find that it becomes a moving target, because when you give solution to a user, what happens is it excites him to ask for more. And if you are prepared for this kind of an environment, I think you are very progressive in a startup, and that's been the experience of Milind. Thank you very much, Milind. It's been a pleasure interacting with you over the last 45 minutes or so. I think a lot of interesting points have been brought out by you. A lot of meaningful inputs have been given, both in terms of underwater domain, in terms of underwater technologies, and management of startup. I think it's been very interesting. And on behalf of IIT Tirupati and Technology Innovation Hub, I thank you for your time and for the knowledge that you've shared with us. It will indeed be very meaningful for the ecosystem. Now, with this, I come to the end of this podcast. It's been a pleasure, and I would thank IIT Tirupati Technology Innovation Hub for facilitating this for all of us. And I'll once again, before I say bye bye, exhort all the professionals to look at the deep ocean mission, look at the understanding of oceanography, hydrography, look at the commercial angle, look at imaging, look at sensing, look at navigation and communication challenges, look at unmanned autonomous underwater vehicles, look at the air independent propulsion and the energy ecosystem which is required for submarines and anything that is underwater. There is a huge amount of should I say challenge and huge amount of opportunity underwater. Do don your thinking caps, absorb what is being told to you, and to get in touch with us should you want to take this forward. And I would exhort you to do it. With this, I wish you the best. Thank you, viewers, for being with us. We will seek your considered comments and views to move ahead in this direction. And till we meet again, Jai Hind.